Oh my god, hey, fancy seeing you here. You should follow me on Twitter, and also possibly connect with me at all of the other social media listed in my link tree, which can be found in the description down below. Thanks! The first time I ever heard Chappell Roan was in the fall of last year, and it was in a very non-traditional way. Basically, I attended a fundraiser in Boston that was a house basement show that was also a fundraiser for gender-affirming care surgery, that was also a marriage ceremony for two of the roommates that lived in the house, and during that marriage ceremony, one of the guests pulled out a guitar and started playing Pink Pony Club, and everyone around me sang along, and in that moment, I realized I had missed a lot. So on the way home, I decided to listen to Chappell Roan's 2023 record, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. And everything instantly clicked. Okay, so if you're watching this video, I'm gonna assume that you know who Chappell Roan is, but in the event that you don't, she is a pop singer from the Midwest. She has been in the game for about 5 years now, but recently blew up due to a combination of factors, including social media and word of mouth, as well as the fact that she recently opened for Olivia Rodrigo on the Guts tour. And gay people love her. Let's talk about why. To put it simply, Chappell Roan makes really quality, fun, upbeat, campy pop music. She also has a very unique brand. Chappell Roan herself describes her own persona as a drag queen. And if you're unaware, yes, women can in fact do drag. I have a whole video that unironically explains this concept if you want to go take a look. And her music and her visual aesthetic match that vibe in the sense that they're very maximalist and over the top, which is a nice visual contrast to the clean girl aesthetic that is popular with a lot of pop stars right now. And that brand is very identifiable and accessible. For example, on Chappell's most recent tour, she has what is essentially a dress code, where audience members are asked to show up in different visual aesthetics that coordinate with some of the themes on the album. So, you know, people are doing the makeup, they're learning the hot to-go dance. Chappell also takes inspiration from various aspects of internet culture, growing a sense of community online by making people feel like they're in on the meme. And finally, Chappell Roan is a lesbian, and speaks very directly to the lesbian experience. A fact that I think pop music fans often take for granted, because it wasn't that long ago that the most common form of lesbian representation that you'd see in music was like I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry. You know, wink wink, it's ironic, it's funny, and fetishy, and not a legitimate experience that artists can make music about. Pop artists in particular, I should say. Okay, so there are like two camps of people who are talking about Chappell Roan right now, similarly to how people reacted to the rise of Renee rap last year. There's, you know, the camp of people who are engaging in normal fandom activities, they're making fan cams and dedicated Twitter accounts, and they're showing up hours early to festivals to try to barricade for their set, you know, normal stuff. And then there's like another camp of people who are acting a little bit gatekeepy about Chappell's success, and that vocal minority is not necessarily getting louder, but is definitely getting boosted kinda in the social media algorithms as Chappell gets more popular. By gatekeepy, I mean that every time Chappell Roan plays a big event like Boston Calling or Coachella or most recently Gov Ball, which I attended, there always seems to be some kind of rampant discourse that to me is just so antithetical to the success of a mainstream artist, which if you're a fan of Chappell Roan, you should want. So let me just do a brief rundown of some of the Chappell Roan conversation that has been happening online in the last couple of months. Just a disclaimer here that I am not legally responsible for the amount of your brain cells that I kill during this. Okay, number one, Good Luck Babe is about lesbians and not at all about bisexual women. Basically, a couple months ago, Chappell Roan released her first single outside of the Midwest Princess album called Good Luck Babe. In the simplest of terms, the song is about a gay woman watching presumably a gay partner who she had an experience with at one point in time, settling down with a man and fighting off the internal feelings of being a gay woman. Now, people on TikTok have been posting their various reactions to the bridge of this song that kind of states the message of the whole song in a very specific and outright way. It's obvious that Chappell Roan has a primarily queer fan base, and basically lesbians have been expressing their frustration at bisexual women who are calling it the definitive bi girl anthem. Now personally, I don't think it's a song about a bi girl in a relationship with a man. I think it's a song about the societal pressures that girls feel, especially lesbians, and you know, the conflicting feelings that come with being gay and having to hide parts of yourself to please other people. It's not rocket science. And obviously, you know, you don't have to hand over a checklist of your entire sexuality and every experience you've ever had to enjoy the song. On the flip side though, I understand why this is frustrating for some people, because Chappell Roan is a lesbian. She has said that she's a lesbian. And so while people are talking about how they specifically relate to this song, the argument here is that this specific interpretation is erasing Chappell's identity as a lesbian. And it feels like lesbians can never just have their own thing. It always has to be co-opted by bisexual or other queer people who through their own processing feel as though they have to boil down every specific experience to their relationship to a man. Similarly, this discussion has led to people debating the history of Chappell Roan's entire sexuality, because while she has said recently that she identifies as a lesbian, people are sort of picking apart what she said in previous interviews and lyrics from other songs that she's written, and they're going, oh, but this is about a man, this is about a man. As if sexuality cannot change as you get more comfortable with yourself over time, which from what I understand is what happened to Chappell Roan. And you may argue that like none of this matters. You know, you can't police who relates to your music, especially as an artist gets bigger and bigger and finds a larger, more diverse audience of people. I think ultimately this boils down to a representation issue in the sense that Chappell Roan is one of the biggest pop stars out there right now, and she is a lesbian, and fans of her who identify with that same group don't want her identity to be watered down or to be commodified to appear more palatable. And like, I hope me explaining it makes you understand what the debate actually is here, so you don't automatically write it off as like completely terminally online. Because I think this is honestly the most sound argument of the ones that we're gonna go through here. I may not agree with it entirely, but like going into this with an open mind and trying to learn another perspective, it's something that I do understand. Number 2, if you are a bisexual woman, I guess don't bring your cishet boyfriend to see Chappell Roan. So anyway, we went to Gov this weekend and saw Chappell Roan live in concert. It was a wonderful experience. You've probably seen these kind of drone shots by now of like this massive crowd over at Citi Field, and we were probably like directly in the middle of it, and honestly it did not even feel that big. Now I guess I'm not gonna directly argue with the contents of this tweet because it also was related to pride and not just, you know, bringing your straight boyfriend to Chappell Roan, and like that feels more of like a separate issue to me, because like yeah, obviously pride is a queer space and allies are welcome depending on who you talk to about it, but like you can't restrict who attends a concert because the artist is gay. Never in a million years has that ever been a thing. Or like mainstream pop acts at the very least. Should Chappell Roan's concerts be a safe space for queer people? Yeah, of course, and she would probably agree with that. I think the root of this discourse and everyone who I see agreeing with this tweet is misguided in the sense that like they are seeing the crowds that Chappell is pulling at these festival events and they're realizing that it's going to be more difficult to get tickets to see her now than it ever previously has been. And that is a very real frustration because probably a year or two ago you could have seen her for a relatively cheap price in a small venue, and now she's another artist that by default has to join the rat race of Ticketmaster and reselling and ridiculous arena fees. I complain about this a lot as someone who likes to go to live events like theater and concerts and sports. Prices are insane and the market is so unbelievably hostile right now, and I understand the frustration. But that frustration can't be aimed at people who are able to go because they're not taking a spot from you. Sometimes people save up a lot of money to go see artists they really like. Sometimes they just fucking go into debt, which I don't recommend. Sometimes they're just looking for really good deals. I know a lot of people who did that for Gov this weekend, just going to the Reddit and trying to find people to sell and buy from. I hope every gay person or straight person or whoever who wants to see Chappell Roan gets to see her eventually. It is a very good show, I can tell you that. But if you got priced out of Chappell Roan or Taylor Swift or Charlie XCX, it's not their fault. It's not the straight boyfriend's fault. It is the fault of the monopoly that runs the live ticketing industry in America and consistently fucks everything up for everyone. The government said they were gonna do something about this, and to my knowledge, they still haven't. And speaking of the government, that brings me to number 3. Chappell Roan is actually not an ally to the LGBTQ community because she protested going to the White House to perform for Pride, however, is still performing in red states with anti-LGBTQ legislation. Now this is an interesting one because I was actually there for this. At Gov on Sunday, Chappell came out in drag dressed as the Statue of Liberty. She took a moment to proclaim her support for gay rights, trans rights, and in her words, the liberation of all occupied territories. Later on in the show, before playing My Kink is Karma, she dedicated the song to the Biden administration, who she says invited her to perform for Pride, and then this is what she said.
We want liberty, justice, and freedom for all. When you do that, that's when I'll come.
Now this makes perfect perfect sense to me, given the statement that she came out with dressed as the Statue of Liberty in the beginning of the set, but this completely fucking outraged people. So basically the argument that I'm showing here in these tweets boils down to, why would Chappell Roan decline an invitation from the most pro-LGBTQ administration of our nation's history and still continue to perform in red states? This is an incoherent argument, and I'll get into both parts of it, so let me address the first part first. Why would Chappell Roan, who has primarily courted an audience of young left-leaning queer people, presumably sharing those same values as well based on the aforementioned statement she made in her set, not want to perform at the White House right now? Fucking beats me, I don't know, man. Now, the second part of this argument is even dumber to me, because all of these tweets imply that what Chappell Roan should really be focusing on if she wants to demonstrate an act of protest is refusing to play in anti-LGBTQ states, or rather states that have passed anti-LGBTQ laws, which completely disregards the fact that there are LGBTQ people in those states who want to see her perform, and are not responsible for the acts of their state governments. You know what's an even bigger act of protest? Traveling to these states and performing as a visibly and openly queer person anyway. This is not that difficult, guys. Ultimately, I don't understand why there is such a big uproar over this. It is not shocking, nor is it surprising, if you know literally anything about Chappell Roan or her audience. And like, just to get ahead of some dumb arguments here, does this mean that I am actively encouraging the Biden administration to not reach out to LGBTQ people? No, they should be doing that, but they should probably take a nice hard look at why that demographic is not responding to their outreach. Probably before November. They should probably really investigate that before November. Okay, last one we're gonna talk about today. Chappell Roan is in fact not that good. She is actually overrated. Now this one is just kind of trivial, and it generally happens every time an artist gets really popular, especially if they are popular with women. In particular, I've seen the argument, you know, after this Gov Ball set and after Chappell Roan basically came out in drag and made a lot of very poignant statements, drew this massively large crowd when a year or two ago not as many people knew her name. It is very reminiscent of one Stephanie Germanotta, also known as Lady Gaga. I will go as far as to say that I don't think we've had a Lady Gaga since Lady Gaga. I don't think anybody has respectably filled that void. She is, you know, a once in a generation. Do I think Chappell Roan can get there? Absolutely she can. I think it's really dependent on the music she puts out from this point. The risks she takes, what she does when she gets in front of a bigger and bigger audience. The momentum is there, the potential is there, and I don't think that saying that is sacrilegious. But if you personally don't feel that way, like there's never gonna be another Lady Gaga to you, that is also fair and valid. I just don't think that people with that opinion should automatically discount Chappell Roan's appeal and talent because people are making that comparison. Are people going to continue to be weird about her for as long as she's this popular? Yeah, happens all the time, nothing new I've seen. But if you're a Chappell Roan stan, I wish you the best, because I think this next year or two is gonna be one hell of a ride. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. My question is one that I've asked before. What is an artist that you think needs more recognition, who you think is gonna blow up this year or next year? I actually asked this in another video like a couple months ago, right before Chappell Roan blew up, and my answer was Chappell Roan. So am I saying I can see the future? Maybe. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.